Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wild, Creative, and Confident, a video interview series where you can learn from the most inspiring industry leaders on how you can use your passion and creativity to design a life and business of your dreams. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Thompson from wildandcreative.com, and another amazing guest I have here today, Rocky Callen, who you've probably seen all over online, and she is an author and a book coach, and she has published 3 novels, if you can believe it. I know many of us are still kind of just trying to get our first one done, so she is very accomplished in that sense, and I so welcome you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. It's an honor to be here with your tribe.
I want to ask you, so writing a book, I mean, even writing one book is like a crazy journey for most people. What was it like for you, really, if you think about the past few years where you've written your books? What has it been like for you? Have you been just literally like writing all day, or?
Yeah, so you mean like what it looks like, the actual nitty-gritty, the behind the scenes. So I talked about this online. I wrote my first book in 15 years. Oh my goodness. Look at that velocity there. But it took me 15 years because I was riddled with self-doubt, with fear, with external negativity that stopped me in my tracks over and over and over again. So I took that long time. And when I was writing, because of all the external negativity, I sort of did it in secret when I did do it. Then when I published my first book, it became a bestseller within 24 hours. And my husband was like, oh, this is legit, okay. So after that, I published my second book. And at that point, I was working full-time as a behavioral therapist. I had a 3-hour daily commute. I had a toddler, I had a husband. And I did not have time. I did not have time to just write. And so I mastered the writing sprint. I would write in 2-minute to 10-minute intervals throughout the day. So my client would go to the bathroom. Yeah, man.
You're like in there with
I wrote on my arm, for real. I wrote on my arm when necessary, when nothing else was available. So, but I wrote that book in just over a month. And so I like to talk to women about who feel like they don't have time. The idea is that we have these slivers of time that we can carve out to create. We just have to be intentional about it. My last book, I wrote it in 8 days, so just over a week. And that was a book where I was putting in all day writing. But for me, it was all night writing because that book was so emotionally devastating for me that I didn't want to worry the people around me, my family. I knew I could not be interrupted. So I wrote at night, ugly crying in the dark. And, but I got it done and I did those full blocks. So I've experienced the whole spectrum of what it looks like
you've literally written every single way.
Exactly. Every single way. So when I have a new client, they're like, oh yeah, I like to write this. I'm like, girl, I got you. We got this. Because the thing is that it's always possible. It is always possible. We just have to decide to make it possible. So yeah, that's the behind the scenes.
So all 3 of your novels are fiction, nonfiction, self-help?
Yep, they're fiction. They're fiction. I'm actually going to be writing a nonfiction specifically for women who want to write a book and change the world one page at a time.
Nice.
And that's coming January 2017. So I'm giving myself lots of time because one of my words for 2016 is spaciousness. And I want to interview lots and lots of women so that everything that is needed for a woman to really take charge and do this will have those resources and encouragement available. But yes, my books were fiction that I published. My last book, though, was fiction, but in all of the flashbacks that were in the book were actually slices of my own experience that I had buried down deep and had never shared. So it was very vulnerable. And when I started sharing about it, I was overwhelmed by the response to not just the content and the theme of the book. It was around suicide and domestic violence, but the fact that people were able to identify with the story and then felt brave enough to share their own. And that's another thing about creatives, is that just the act of being creative liberates others to be creative. And that's so awesome. It's so powerful.
So your books really have a specific niche to them. Truly, right? But I'm imagining that those who do pick up your book and read about such an interesting and in-depth topic, I mean, they're probably diehard fans now, right? I mean, so
well, you know what? This is what's funny, is that I started writing young adult fantasy, and a very dark fantasy, very scary fantasy. My first 2 books, and my husband, because I'm such a chicken, like watching scary movies, I was always terrified. But I was writing this really scary stuff, and I was explaining it to my husband, and he was like, who are you? Where's my wife? So those 2 books, yeah, I mean, the thing is that those 2 books are so different than my last book. They're so different. I've a writing style that always comes through, but the feel, the tone, the market, the readership is very different. And that's the thing, is that when we create, everything we create has its own heart, it has a piece of us, everything, but has its own tone. It has its own place in the world. But yeah, so there are people, I haven't published in about, I guess, a year and a half or so. But people still message me. They're like, when's the next book coming out? When are you doing this? Are you coming to Brazil? Are you coming to Paris? Which I am going to go to Paris in September to do a book signing. And the thing is that it's so encouraging to feel seen and recognized and then honored for something that you love so much.
And people wanting more of you too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so you're very creative, but have you always been a very creative person? Have you always been just like truly inspired to give the world something like that?
Yes. So I have always been creative. I was born creative. My dream as a little girl was to write, was to be an author. But this is what happened. So I knew very young, I was like 4, 5, 6, wanting like folding up the paper, making my little books, putting my name, like I just knew I was going to be an author, right? And when I was about 11 or 12, I was actually invited to a professional writers critique group, and I shared my pages and everything, and I was just like, I'm on the right track. And then something happened, and I stopped. I completely stopped. And for over a decade, I was not creative anymore. And it was that silencing of true self that came into play. And it took the years to really approach myself again, to own and feel that it was good. It was a gift to honor and cherish and actually bring to the world. But it took me so long to reclaim it when it was something that was so natural in me as a child. So always creative, but then I put myself on pause for a while.
Well, it was, I mean, I can imagine, I remember being a girl, 11, 12, or whatever, whenever that was for you. That's a really tricky time, right? Because you can either come out of your shell and just start being you, or a lot of young women go into kind of like a shell, like a hiding time, right? So, I can definitely relate to that.
What happened, and I want to share this because maybe some of your tribe can relate. What happened for me was I was basically given the feedback that writing, being an author, was stupid, that wasn't something that you could make a career out of, that you couldn't be a successful person doing that. And there was a point where I was, because I was a reader, bookaholic, And my dad took the book I was reading in my hand. We were driving down a highway, and he threw it out the window, and he said, "Stop being such a geek." And, and I just remember that was like the point where I let go of the dream. Like, yeah, just move on.
It literally went out the window.
It went out the window, looking in the side view mirror, and I'm watching it disappear. And that's literally what it felt like the dream was disappearing. And, and I threw myself into work in academics. I was in college by 16. I was lobbying and interning at NASA by 12. I just went full throttle into a very specific direction. But the direction, because I chose it to be that way, did not include creativity. Mm-hmm. So that's something that sometimes we disguise, like the boxing up of our creativity as, oh, we're just pursuing a different goal. But we can allow space for all of ourself to be present. We just have to be really open and honest that is what we really want.
So what was your career before you really became a book coach then?
Mm-hmm. I was a behavioral therapist for over a decade. Okay. And yeah, so I did that, and it was very intense work. I generally worked with cases where I had to work full time with each client. And it was powerful. It was, people had incredible breakthroughs, but it was also incredibly draining. So,
but that whole time really has added to your career now as a book coach, mm-hmm. right? I mean, I'm sure that adds a whole other element to the work that you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when I take on a client, what happens is a lot of times people try to say, I want to write a book. Here's the page. This is the pen. Start writing. But a lot of times people, especially when they've had a dream in them to write a book for a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years, however long it may be, they haven't written something yet because there's these internal blocks that are making it feel impossible. So they might have the greatest intentions, but they really need to untangle that stuff, that crap that's inside that's blocking their creativity or blocking their feeling of worthiness or their capacity. And so we are able to untangle all of that. And so that way, when they do hit the page, they are in full alignment with their intention.
What do you think, or how do you think that you have taken your passion for writing and really morphed it into a way that is different from most people? Like, what really makes you unique in that sense?
It's funny because I couldn't put my finger quite on it, and then someone told me. So thank you, person that told me this. And she said that I'm a healer, but I use words. And I completely and totally own that. I really feel like we have this ability to share our story in a way that impacts the world. Like, I fiercely believe in the power of our story, of our words, and the impact they can have, not only on the world, not only on society, not only on everything around us, but that it impacts who we are. And the journey to become an author is not just getting the title author. You become someone new when you're able to put in the time, put in the effort, put in the true belief that it's possible, and then attain it. You are someone different by the end of that journey. And so I recognize that. And so when I'm talking about writing and when I am bringing that to communities or to women, I bring it from this very soulful place of, I want to change the world with you, and I want it to be healed along the way. So, I think that we all have our voice, and that's just mine.
Well, you have a couple different programs that you offer, and you have your Bleed Inc. program, mm-hmm. right? And so that's kind of a DIY program for women who are just wanting a real nudge, push in the right direction to really get that book started. And even your audio on that program, you talk so softly, and you just like it so comes from the heart, so much. I really honestly felt like you were the best book babysitter ever. You grab someone's hand and you're just like, it's okay, sweetie, like we can do this. Like you just have that way about you. So I'm sure that program has helped so many women. So I just wanted to
Thank you.
what has been your biggest achievement to date that when it comes to personal power and understanding yourself to the point of ease and flow in your life?
Yes. So this is there was a moment. Okay. So whenever I think of personal, accomplishments, people talk about when it hit bestseller, blah, 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 all that stuff. But for me, there was one very specific moment, and it was when I decided to say no to being diminished. So I was writing my first book, and like I said, I was surrounded by external negativity at the time. And there was a point where someone I love very deeply said, because I was a successful behavioral therapist. Like I was known, respected, making good money, all of this. And so this idea of wanting to be not a book coach, an author was just silly. It was ridiculous in the mind of this person. And so I had my manuscript printed out, and he took my manuscript and he threw it in the trash. And he said, just stop. And up until that point, I had faced so many times where there was that push, that person that told me to stop, right?
Threw it out the window.
Right, exactly. And there was always these little things that came up that kept stopping me. And at that moment in my mind, I just thought, I can't stop. I can't stop. And so I remember feeling on the brink of tears, feeling ready to retreat and say, okay, fine. And standing up, walking over to the trash can, picking up my manuscript and said, I write because I have to. And that was it. And from that moment on, I never allowed someone to say you can't or you shouldn't, because I don't fucking care. It's in me, and it is irrelevant what anyone else has to say. It's like we don't want to die with the song still in us. And so we have to sing. And it doesn't matter how loud it is. It doesn't matter if we're the only one in the room. It doesn't matter. So I feel like finding that alignment and that flow and that ease was just giving myself permission to not give a damn about anybody else.
There are so many books out there, right? Like, which is amazing and in another sense must be daunting for most authors, right? You probably see books on the shelves of bookstores and been like, I think that was something I had in me maybe, right? And now it's out. But what is your take on competitiveness? So how have you really been creative opposed to competitive? And how has competitiveness really bothered you? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm not competitive. I think part of it is before I was an author, I was a reader. And for a reader, there is no such thing as too many books.
No.
And so I think that's the same thing for any creative. If you're a singer, if you're an artist, if you design clothes, whatever it is you do, there's room for more. There's so much room for more. And that's the same thing as a book coach. People come in and they're like, oh, people have already talked about soul, or people have already talked about my kind of story. And it's like, it's irrelevant. That's irrelevant, because when you look at a bookshelf, when you go to the bookstore, there's whole sections on specific themes. Yeah. And the thing is that what I resonate with is going to be something completely different than what my neighbor or the person down the street or the person in the UK, whoever it is. We all find who we need to find. But if we're not brave enough to put our voice out there, then they're left lost. And I'm always about, like, because the reason why I published the way I did too, I fell into an indie community of just these awesome authors. And it's like we created this sisterhood. There's lots of drama going on. There's lots of, publishing things and like bickering and blah, blah, blah. I'm just not available to it because, I have something sacred with my sisters, with the way I respect and honor the books or whatever artistry people are bringing to the world. And that's the expression of that person. And so that in no way being in the world takes away from the expression of that person. There's room for it all. And I just I just thinking about it, it's just, I feel so overflowing with love at the idea that there is so much out there and that there will be so much more because we need it.
Yeah.
The world needs it.
I mean, it's funny, right? Like you said about how, somebody will resonate with your book and maybe not with somebody else's book or vice versa in that same category. It's really like the perceptual lens, right? Like you go back into your bookshelf 2 years later and you pull out a book you've read and you read it again. You're like, I had no idea that book was about that because you weren't ready at the time or you didn't resonate with that author, whatever, right? So it's funny. Everything's perfect in a sense, right? So
absolutely.
Do you have a specific method that you've really used over the years for the female entrepreneurs or even future authors that are watching that could really help them fall into their true calling or even really, step up in their own lives and say, I can do this?
Yes. So one of the first exercises I do with my clients or even with people that I come across that are really grappling with the idea of, can I be creative? Can I bring this dream that's in me out? Is I walk through them, okay, close your eyes. And then I walk them through this meditation about what if I never do it? And they are hit with such a powerful reaction of desperation, of disappointment, of, oh my gosh, what if I don't? That creates in them the urgency to say, I must.
Right.
And so it's so much of mindset that goes into it because, you can give someone the exact step-by-step about how to do anything. And if you're not at the point in your life where you can make the decision, I love You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Yep.
That says, you have to put a 10-ton gorilla behind your decision. You have to have that almighty decision. And so if there's anyone in your tribe, anybody listening, watching, that they feel like there's something in them that they want to bring to the world, then I dare them right now to declare it, to decide, to own it, and then to get public about it. Mm-hmm. So it's not just something that you wrote in your journal this morning, aside, next to your chai tea, something that you're going out and you're declaring to the world. I'm going to write a book this year. I'm going to paint my masterpiece. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. And then you're going to be overwhelmed by the encouragement and the feedback that comes. And if you're not, then you're in the wrong crowd. It's not about you changing. It's about you finding your tribe and finding that sisterhood, that tribe, whatever you crave most to support you in that endeavor. It's going to be magical. It's going to be so empowering. So you make the decision, you find the support, and you go hell bent in your frenzy to make sure it happens.
I know that over the years I have found whenever I've got really clear on something that I really wanted to do and made that decision, and whether or not it was just like a shift, just a couple degree shift over, you start to meet the most interesting people. You start to meet or have the most interesting experiences that you weren't having before, like on that route, right? So it really, you said declaring, like it really is all about that and just really stating, if you know you have a book in you, in a sense, I mean, I don't know if it's wrong to say this, but, call yourself an author. Like maybe that will really get it out of you, right? tell everybody, like, yeah, I'm writing a book. Can you check in with me in 2 months because I'm writing a book? So you know what I mean? So you always have that kind of accountability, right? So let's talk about what you do, because I'm assuming that's really all about what a book coach does. You hold people accountable. You help people really become inspired. Can you tell us a little bit about like your day-to-day with that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to say that I'm so honored to do the work I do. I love it so fiercely. I can't even describe it. It's just like head over heels in love. So, I take on clients, and I have different programs, but I take on clients, and we first create the vision. If nothing held you back, what would this vision be? And it's a vision about who they are. It's a vision of what it feels like to hold their book. It's a vision of who's holding their book. It's all of this. Who's reading, who's sending them messages at 2:03 in the morning saying thank you, and what are they saying? Creating that grand vision. And then we go to the point of, okay, so what's stopping this from happening? And we go and do all the internal work to make sure that they can shed the fear, the self-doubt, the feelings of unworthiness. And then we just go in and we do the whole nitty-gritty outline, and they have the accountability and the writing support. And I really am also really invested in them finding their voice. So I don't want to just say, you wrote your book, yay. I want them to be like, I wrote a book and I am so damn proud of it. This truly is a piece of my heart. So we go in and we make sure that their voice is potent all the way through, that their message and their impact and what they truly desire to say is there and vibrant. So it goes from the mindset, the vision, to the internal work, to the nitty-gritty of making sure it gets out there, and then also the really deep finding of voice that has to, it all comes together in like this really beautiful way. And so my intention is to hold people by the hand and walk them through that process. What I'm really excited about is that right now I just work one-on-one, but I'm going to be creating a program that is downloadable, but that goes through every piece of that process, so that anyone that truly has the desire can go in and do that as many times as they need to. So I'm really excited about that. But
so how long would someone work with you, like technically on
a book? So it varies, but I'm retiring all of my one-on-one packages this year. But up until this point, it's been between 4 and 9 months. And a lot of people are sort of in the middle of their packages right now. And the 4 to 9 months is just really about where the author is, to meet them where they're at. Do they want to go full speed, or do they really want to tease it out of themselves, give them the space and the energy to do that? Mm-hmm. So, but I would say for people, like, I think my program that I'm going to be releasing, I think it's going to be aiming for the 6-month mark, because I think that what happens is that 6 months is enough time to get it done and get it out, but it also creates this container of, I can do something in 6 months. Like, I can devote 6 months of my life to this. And then they're going to find that they love it so much that they're going to want to do it over and over again. So,
and even though it's possible to write a book in 8 days, like you did, right? I'm assuming that 6-month mark for people is a safe zone. They could do it in 2 months if they really wanted to, but they're not.
Absolutely.
It doesn't let that fear kind of come up for them, right? As much.
Absolutely. And I think because a lot of times I'm working with first-time authors, so we're doing all that work that I did over those 15 years of not writing or trying to write that first book. We're condensing it so they don't have to go those years. We're doing that work in weeks rather than years or months or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, I am in huge tribes of authors, and that's all they do. They're full-time authors. And I have friends that, they put out 4 books a year. I have friends that have put out 28 books in a year.
That's a lot.
Yeah, she is she's a new species. She's amazing. But this thing is that she knows she writes a book in a week, then she knows how long her editing process is, and then she knows what she markets. And it's just, for her, that's her career, and that's what she does, and she just pumps them out. And she has a phenomenal readership because she's known for that. And she's award-winning. She's a phenomenal writer too. So it's finding that quality. And then how long does it take you to produce that quality? Doesn't matter if it's shorter or longer. You just figure it out, and then you keep going with it.
You have some remote book classes that you're teaching, right? Like do you do them once a year? Like you're remote, you go to an amazing place. Like I think you're doing one in Bali, right?
Right. Yes. So actually, I am going to do this more in 2017, but this year I'm bringing a group of women to Bali, and we're going to have a week writers retreat. And in 2015, early 2015, I said I want to create something sacred, and that's what this is. And so that's a writers retreat. In September, I'm going to Paris. I'm doing a retreat for myself, but then I'm also doing events. One is I'm doing another book launch for myself, but another thing is I want to do some sort of gathering to support aspiring authors in their journey. And I'm going to be in Guatemala in this year too. So that's all things that I really love. Like if I could do nothing else, if you strip me of everything I have or do or whatever, I would just love to inspire people to set the intention and own it. So in 2017, I want to travel a lot so that way I can be in these communities and, for young adults, for people, wherever they are in their life, just say, you can still do this. It's still possible. You are ready right now, and I can show you how to get there. In an afternoon. I mean, that's just so much fun. It's just so much fun to be in intimate communion with people and see them liberate those dreams. It's just such an honor.
So you're truly a change maker. You're a little fire starter. Going in, you want to go to these like different places and just really spark the inspiration for people to even if it's not writing something else, right? But just to show them that they can truly do it. Do you have a little something, like a little giveaway that you have for our viewers?
Yes, I do. So the first module of that Bleed Ink program is the writer mindset. And the writer mindset is that whole going in deep and untangling all of the blocks and all of the obstacles that are in you that are keeping you from writing your book. And so that goes through the process. It's about an hour audio that walks you through it and a workbook so that by the end you can let go of all of those blocks and feel ready to write. So that is my gift to your tribe.
Well, that is awesome because I'm sure anybody who listens would love your audio because, like I said before, you've just got this really soothing voice, and it really makes people feel as though they absolutely have it in them to do whatever they want. So anyway,
thank you so much.
And I have one more question for you before we end. What is it that makes you wild, creative, and confident?
Oh my. So wild and creative. Creative has always been there. Wild, I've discovered more recently, as well as confidence. And I have to say that I'm at this place in my life now where I'm just so open. Like you tell me there's something that's magical tomorrow that's halfway, that I have to drive cross country for. I'm in my car and I'm going, and my hair's down and I'm barefoot. I'm having my Moscato and I'm just going off. And, and I think that openness and that desire for a really full and vibrant life just sparks in you this desire to be wild and to be confident, because you can't take any risk without that confidence. And so I think that I've allowed myself to finally own feeling wild, creative, and confident. And for me, what that looks like is to be extremely present with the world around me and to be very open to every experience that comes my way, and to just not care if it's logical or whatever. If it hits you in the heart and it's ready or blazing as something that needs to be done in your life, then you go for it. And I feel like that's just liberation, you know? So being wild, creative, and confident really is just liberation.
That's awesome. I want to share this story with you. I know we're at the end, but it was when I had first started my business 4 years ago, and it was called Connection to Creative with another girl. She's amazing. She went a different route of motherhood, and I continued on. So I rebranded everything into Wild and Creative, and I really love that name. And I said on it, I was like, yes, that's the name that I want to have. But then I had a real hard issue with it for a few days, and I was just like stewing about it, and I was like, I don't know if I can deliver. I don't know if I can deliver this name, Wild and Creative. I was like, I'm not that wild. Like I was telling my fiance, I was like all worried about it. And I was like, I feel like it's a little bit like Girls Gone Wild. And he's like, I don't think so at all. Like, I think you're thinking too much into this. And I was like, but Chris, I don't dance naked under the full moon. Like, I can't live up to this name. And he was like, honestly, if you're worried about it, like, go dance naked under the full moon. And I was like, huh. So I did. And then I was like, I own it. It's fine. Like, it's all about wild truly is, what did you say? Is liberation. It truly is. It's liberation. However that is for you. So I mean that's just a funny little story, but if you feel that whatever that is for you, dancing naked under the full moon, like, go do it. If it helps you write your book, if it helps you feel liberated to travel, whatever it is, just go do that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing, is that I think another piece is that it looks different for everybody. And that's awesome. That's not just okay. That's awesome. And that's necessary. And so I think that that's a great example. Wild can look so different. And that's a beautiful thing. Thank God that it can look so different for everybody.
So where can everybody find you?
Y'all can find me at www.rockycallen.com. And also I have a free group on Facebook called the Bleed Ink Tribe. And that's specifically for aspiring authors who want love, support, and sisterhood as they create.
Nice. Awesome. And I'm in there, and I always see that you're just so supportive, and you're, just so provoking in a sense, where you're just getting people's ideas flowing about writing their book. So it's an amazing group. If anybody wants to head into that group, definitely I do suggest it. So thank you so much, Rocky, for being on this interview with us. And you're definitely wild, creative, and confident. Thank you so much. And I know a lot of people will definitely benefit from this chat we had. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.